States of America, a great country of the New World, founded in 1776. It is one of the youngest countries compared to the ancient civilization of Europe. But today, America became the most prosperous, most powerful nation in the modern world. However, the United States will not become the United States we know today without its people. When speaking of the American people, there's no denial that the Society of America composes of many different groups from around the world, as America has been known as a country of immigrants for centuries. Since its foundation, people of different backgrounds came to America with hopes of starting a better life in this land of freedom and opportunity. South Americans, Europeans, Asians, Africans, all are an essential ingredients of the melting pot that define American culture today. Eastern Europeans contributed no less than the other groups. When thinking of Europe, people would rarely think of sub-regional Europe as different as the rest. But Eastern Europeans' Slavic culture is surely distinct from the Europe that people are familiar with. Therefore, they deserve recognition of their own.
The notable influx of immigrants from Eastern Europe came around the period between late 19th century to early 20th century. These people left their homeland for various reasons. Some came for wealth, some were forcibly chased away, and some were displaced by greater power. Since the 19th century up to present, there are major changes in Eastern Europe border due to war and political reasons. Many countries may cease to exist, many merged into empire, and a lot broke up as a new independent country. So the countries present in this video are the countries we decide to have the most influence in American society, both in terms of population size and culture. Those countries consist of Russia, Ukraine, Romania, and Poland. The first record of the Russian in America territory was in Alaska, long before Alaska was sold to the United States. There were a number of Russians that took residence in Alaska. Traders and Catholic missionaries made up most of the population. Not long after, the Russians moved southward and set up colonies in Northern California. After the United States acquisition of Alaska in 1867, most of the Russians in Alaska left, but some remained. The first wave of Russian immigration to United States began in the late 19th century, mainly from political and economic reasons. Many of them left from the combination of both reasons. Between 1820 to 1870, only 7,550 Russians immigrated to the United States. But starting with 1881, immigration rate exceeded 10,000 a year. 553,700 in 1891 to 1900, 1.6 million in 1901 to 1910, 868,000 in 1911 to 1914, and 43,000 in 1915 to 1917. The most important group of immigration are those who were grouped from the Imperial Russian, seek freedom from religious persecution, including Russian Jewish that avoid ethnic cleansing by Alexander III in 1881 to 1882. And they were seen as a religious dissenter and heretic. Many of the first wave immigrants settled largely in the western United States in the city of Los Angeles, San Francisco, Portland, Oregon. Two large groups of students moved to Virginia and the Dakotas. And mostly between 1874 and 1880, German-speaking Anabaptists, Russian Mennonites, and Hutterites who left the Russian Empire and settled mainly in Kansas. Next, 1908 to 1910, the Old Believers or the Eastern Orthodox Christians who had been persecuted as schismatic arrived and settled in small groups in California, Oregon, Pennsylvania, and New York. Moreover, there are many notable immigrants of this wave include Irving Berlin and Andrei Telitschev, influential Californian winemaker, and Ivan Terchaninov, who immigrated in 1856 and became a United States Army brigadier general during the Civil War. Furthermore, the turmoil of the World War I also shaking the European continent. Therefore, Russia became the major battlefront of the war. Many fighting from Russia, Germany, and Austro-Hungarian Empire took place in Russia's motherland. Because of the atrocity of World War I, immigration diminished a great deal between 1914 to 1917. But after the war, hundreds of thousands of Jews and Russians began to live in Europe and Russia again for the US. Next, we're gonna talk about the second wave of Russian immigration. The second wave of Russian immigration consists a large amount of immigrants in a short period of time between 1917 to 1922. Due to the major incidents of October Revolution, the greatest socialist revolution led by Bolshevik Party of Vladimir Lenin, and the consequences of Russian Civil War. The prominent immigrants group was known as the White immigrants, which refer to the Russian immigrants that immigrate from the territory of Russian Empire in the wake of Revolution of 1917 and the Civil War. They are often known as in opposition with Bolshevik communists. They basically left the country due to the political unrest, and United States certainly was the third largest destination of those immigrants after France and Serbia. However, some might consider this wave of immigration as a first wave when discussing Soviet-era immigration. Moreover, most of the immigration this period were the higher class status of Russian Empire, who usually contribute a great deal for United States, both scientific and cultural aspects. There are many famous names that arrived on this wave. For instance, the inventors Vladimir Zworykin, also known as the father of the television, and Igor Stravinsky, that was considered to be among the greatest composers ever lived in United States of America. The novelist Vladimir Nabokov, the violinist Jascha Heifetz, and the actor Eugene Orfeo entered United States at this period, the same with wave. After the October Revolution, the Bolsheviks took control of Russia as a Soviet republic for a brief period. Then the USSR was founded in 1922. The American government feared that the socialist revolution would occur in the United States, so they started spying on and disrupting on Russian groups in America, including union and social clubs. The fear for the revolution resulted in arrest and deportation of many Russians living in America. Consequently, Russian communities converted to Protestantism and denying their Russian heritage. Around 1930s, sensing a possible outbreak of another world war and the Soviet famine, Russians fled the Soviet Union. Many came to United States, bringing with them the skills and knowledge for their new home. After World War II, more than 20,000 fled to the United States. Because there were so many Russians moving to the US, the Soviet government would disown those people, stripping them from citizenship. Ultimately, the Soviet government tightened the control on immigration, making the process of migrating to other countries harder. However, as the Soviet Union was heading to its demise, the grip on immigration control was loosened. The immigration toward the US now has recovered. Next, we're gonna talk about the post-Soviet immigration to present time. After 1987, mass Russian Jewish immigrated a great deal with perestroika communist political reformation. As discussed previously, that the immigration outside the USSR territory would be unpleasant. With the complexion of immigration and the influx of the mass immigrants, for the first time in history, Russians became a notable part of illegal immigration to the United States. Nevertheless, with the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991 and the subsequent transition to the free market economy, came hyperinflation and a series of political and economic crises of 1990s, culminating the financial crash in 1998. By mid-1993, between 39% and 49% of Russians were living in poverty, a sharp increase compared to 1.5% of the late Soviet era. The immigrant trying to get a fresh start in United States hit the jackpot because of the stock market boom in 1995 to 2001. Consequently, the number of the immigrants from the new wave of both political and economic immigration from Russia are prominent. Furthermore, the most notable part of post-Soviet immigration wave consists of scientists and engineers who faced with extremely poor job market and opportunity at motherland, along with the government unwilling to index fixed salaries according to the inflation or even to make salary payments on time. They were left to pursue their career abroad. This coincides with the surge of high-tech industry in the United States, creating a strong brain drain effect. According to the National Science Foundation, there were 20,000 Russian scientists working in the United States in 2003. Likewise, skilled professionals often command a significant higher wage in US than in Russia. The number of Russian migrants with university education is higher than that of US natives and other foreign-born groups. Next, we're gonna talk about the community with high percentage of people of Russian ancestry, ranked by top 3. First, Fox River, Alaska, 80.9%. Second, Alenewa, Alaska, 72.5%. And third, Nikolaev, Alaska, 67.5%. Furthermore, we're gonna talk about US community with the most residents born in Russia, ranked by top 3. First, Millville, Delaware, 8.5%. Second, South Windham, Maine, 7.8%. And the last one is South Cow Lake, Michigan, 7.6%. For the most part, Russians were able to assimilate into American culture with ease, but some minorities, like the Orthodox Russian, would rather keep their own tradition. The Russians would still speak their mother language when at home or in close environments. In some areas where there is a big Russian population, the language would be taught in public school. Unfortunately, things would turn for the worse as Soviet Union became more influential in the world. As mentioned earlier, the US government would keep a close eye on the Russian community. The Red Scare would turn public opinion against Russians. They were afraid that the Russians would bring about the spread of communism or fear Russian espionage during the Cold War.
Next, we're going to talk about food. Food was one of the defining characteristics of one's culture, and there were no exceptions for the Russians. Even though they now live in the US, they still fancy the meals that they had in Russia. One of their iconic dishes is borscht, a sour beet-based soup that is often served with sour cream called smetana. Another dish the Russians brought to the United States was beef stroganoff, a beef meal sautéed in mustard sauce, often eaten with noodles or rice. And pelmeni was also a popular Russian dish that came with them. It is a dumpling with meat filling that is considered the heart of Russian cuisine. And also, we cannot forget to mention vodka. Now let us explore some of the stereotypes associated with the Russians in America next. First stereotype is that Russians are unfriendly and always angry. This is true to some extent because Russians do not have the culture of smiling to every stranger they see. They will only smile when they are genuinely happy or when they are with trusted one. But they are definitely not always angry. Next is the belief that all Russians are communists. It truly is unfair to brand anyone this way, but we can see where this type of thinking are coming from. The USA had a big political rivalry with the Soviet Union for the whole second half of the 20th century. The fear of communist infiltration of the Cold War contributed a great deal to this stereotype. Even though Russians today is still a big rival of the USA, they are not communists anymore. Additionally, not everyone in Russia, even during the Soviet Union times, was a supporter of communists. The last stereotype is that it is believed that the Russians are always drunk. If you have been watching Hollywood movies for some time, you may notice that there are a large selection of Russian characters, but unfortunately, the way they were depicted are quite limited and repetitive. In addition, those characters seem to be the reflection of the stereotype mentioned above. In movies and video games, Russian characters are often portrayed to be tough and intimidating. From observation, American cinema has an obsession with Russian villains. We see lots of big characters with scary features or crime boss like Ivan Draco from Rocky IV and Viggo Tarasov from John Wick. Another very common way Russians are portrayed is by having them be some sort of a spy or have some relations to the Soviets. And when I say that the way Russian characters are depicted are limited, I really mean that, because 80% of the top 20 Russian characters in American cinema list are either crime boss or spy. Then we're going to talk about famous Russian American people. The first one is Isaac Asimov. He was a famous Russian American science fiction writer who was born in Russia. His family moved to America when he was 3 years old. He started off by writing fiction to be told among friends, and when he was 18, he started publishing his work with John Campbell's magazine. He did not have a good start, but as years go by, his works are being more successful. His famous works are the Foundation series, Nightfall, and I, Robot, that was adapted into film in 2004, starring Will Smith. Next person is Igor Stravinsky. Born in Russia 1882, he became inspired by his musician parents to pursue this career path. During World War I, he had to seek refuge in Switzerland for a duration of the war. He had to bounce around in Europe for 20 years before deciding to immigrate to the United States in 1940. He became a citizen in 1945, and he composed a lot of his original works in the United States, and in 1944 he performed his rearranged version of Star Spangled Banner. Stravinsky's famous works consist of The Rise of Spring, Petrushka, and Oedipus Rex.
Moving next to the neighbor country of Russia, the Ukraine. Both Russia and Ukraine share some history together, but they are unique on their own. The Ukraine is the largest country in Europe with a population of 43 million, excluding Russia. They are known as the breadbasket of Europe because of their huge wheat farming industry. But the history did not go easy for them. That called for a large migration from Ukraine to other parts of the world, and the United States was among the desired destination. First and foremost, we need to know the estimate amount of the Ukrainian American community as present. According to the 2000 US Census, cities with the most Ukrainian American population are New York at 160,000, Philadelphia 60,000, Chicago 46,000, and Detroit at 45,000. And by 2018, the number of Ukrainian Americans surpassed 1 million. Next, there are records of the first Ukrainian in America from 1607. His name is Ivan Bohdan. Surprisingly, this Ukrainian man sailed to America with Captain John Smith to Jamestown colony. His fate was unknown, but he is surely someone to remember. However, after Bohdan, the Ukrainian migration to the United States will not occur until the late 1880s. First, we're going to talk about the first wave of Ukrainian immigration. The first wave of Ukrainian immigration began between 1899 to 1914. Due to the conflict between peasants and Austro-Hungarian Empire. Moreover, Ukraine was not an independent political state. The vast amount of territory in Ukraine today was part of Russian Empire, with a western region administered by Austro-Hungarian Empire. Therefore, the outbreak occurred in the period of World War I, when the Russia began an assault in Garcia against the fort of Austro-Hungary in 1914. Ukrainians were split into separate groups and opposed both sides of the army. Around 3.5 million fought with Imperial Russian, while 25,000 fought Austro-Hungarian Empire at the same time. Many Ukrainians end up fighting each other and create a huge league within the country unification. However, about 254,000 Ukrainian immigrants were able to arrive in the United States and settle in North Dakota, and by 1909 there was an estimate of number of 47,000 both first and second generation Ukrainian American. Next we're gonna discuss about the second wave of Ukrainian immigration. The second wave are mostly refugee. The people of the second wave were Ukrainian patriots that believe in the independence of Ukraine. Therefore, they are a target of the persecution for the Bolsheviks. 12,000 Ukrainians came to the United States within this wave. Next, the third wave of Ukrainian immigration. The third wave began around 1947 to 1955. About 80,000 migrated to United States due to the destruction caused by World War II, led to another significant exodus of Ukrainians. The Soviet government also restricted most forms of immigration. Furthermore, the World War II itself made a tremendous impact that contributed the mass Ukrainian diaspora. Moreover, Ukrainians lost 1/6 of the population from the war and the atrocity of USSR, which left about 10 million people homeless. Also, with an extreme economic hardship with post-Soviet repression, many Ukrainian citizens decided to leave. In United States, they create huge impact on cultural organizations, choir and dance troops, museums, newspaper, and so on. Ukrainian art was on display and admired by many Americans. Next, the last wave of Ukrainian immigration, the fourth wave. Ukrainian immigration, this wave came to the United States during the early 1990s. This is the first wave that left Ukrainian because of economic reasons. After gaining independence from USSR, the country's economic declined in worst way. Even with the aid from other European nations could not help the Ukrainian economic effort. It looked like the Soviet system that had been governing Ukraine for a long time had failed. An estimate of 100,000 Ukrainians immigrated to America during 1992 to 1997.
According to the data from year 2000, there are nearly 900,000 Ukrainians living in America, with New York City hosting the largest number of 148,000 Ukrainians, coming in second in Pennsylvania. It hosts 122,000 Ukrainians, and in third place California with 83,000, and lastly New Jersey at 12th place with 73,000 Ukrainians. In terms of assimilation, the first wave of Ukrainian immigrants did not really have the sense of nationality because the conflict at home. The loss of national unity helped with the assimilation into the American society easily. In general, most Ukrainians did not have problem assimilating to the American culture. In fact, they happily embrace the new culture and are willing to adapt. Therefore, they face no discrimination. Once they're settled, most of them got a job in the United States growing industry. A large number worked in coal mines, steel mills, and factories, while the others were found in automotive industry and oil refineries. As for the culinary contribution of the Ukrainians, they have a lot of delicious dishes, but we are only giving 3 examples. The first one is chicken Kiev. It is a simple fried chicken menu for the Ukrainians. They stuff chicken breast with garlic butter, then cover it with batter and breadcrumbs. It can either be fried or baked. Second, we have dureni. This dish is a classic Ukrainian potato pancake, served for breakfast as appetizer or side dish. It often comes with sour cream or smetana. And last one is banush or banosh. It is a dish prepared by adding sour cream with cornmeal with grated cheese and pork cracklings as toppings. When finished, the texture will be like a pudding. The dish is considered to be one of the best Ukrainian dish. Moving next to the Ukrainian stereotypes. Everyone has got an idea about something, and sometimes it turns so big that it became a stereotype. Some stereotypes are true and some are not. And here we have gathered some of the stereotypes about the Ukrainians that they have faced. The first one is that the Ukrainians are the same with the Russians. Until today, many foreigners consider Ukrainians as the same as Russians. It is understandable as an outsider they would not understand the difference between the two languages, but it is a big mistake, since they have only about 60% in common. And moreover, there is even a perception that the winter in Ukraine are fierce and snowy, and people walk around in the fur hats and ear flaps. And in the village, you can meet a bear in the yard, like we see on the internet. Next is Ukrainian people are very friendly. Foreigners think that Ukrainians are generous and friendly. They're always ready to help, and they love to give advices. They also have a wonderful sense of humor, and some said that if you are in contact with a Ukrainian, you will immediately feel all the friendliness and hospitality of the Ukrainian people, unlike the Russians. And last is Ukrainian women are extremely beautiful. Ukrainian women often win beauty contests, and Western and Eastern men often marry into the Ukrainian family. In addition, Ukrainian women take care of themselves, and Ukrainian women love to dress, use cosmetic, and braid their hairs. Therefore, no wonder why people all over the world tend to think Ukrainian women are the definition of bright and attractive. Now, how the media portrays Ukraine is quite like how the Russians were portrayed. However, the Ukrainians get much less representation in the media, if we don't count the news about Ukraine war today. One of the ways that they show Ukrainian characters in movies and games is to have them be a Soviet spy. And since Ukraine was once a part of the USSR, they got the representation that way. Another way is that Ukrainian characters are often gangsters with thick accents. Two of the way the Ukrainians are portrayed are nearly identical to the Russians, but I can think of one unique thing about Ukraine that gets representation a lot in the media. It is the Chernobyl power plant disaster. There are many series and documentaries about it, but the most prominent portrayal is in the game Call of Duty, where we have one mission that takes place in the nearby radioactive city of Pripyat. Next is the famous people that came from Ukraine to the United States. First is Mila Jovovich. She is a well-known Ukrainian-American actress. Mila was born in Kiev but emigrated to the US in the 1980s. She was famous from starring roles in numerous science fiction and action movies. She also played leading role in the movie Ultraviolet and many more. Her most notable role was Alice in an action horror franchise, Resident Evil. Another important people from Ukraine is Igor Sikorsky. He was a Ukrainian-American aviation pioneer in both helicopter and fixed-wing aircraft. He came to the United States in 1919 and founded Sikorsky Aircraft Corporation in 1923. He was remembered as designer of the world's first production helicopter, and you might be more familiar with some of the Sikorsky products like the UH-60 Black Hawk and CH-53 Sea Stallion that are still in service with the United States military and appeared in many movies.
Polish immigrants were first recorded to be in America as far back as Jamestown in 1608. Unfortunately, we have no account of their name, but we know that they were brought by Captain John Smith to America. There were 8 of them, and they worked as a glass blower, soap makers, and carpenters. In America today, there are estimated 9 million Polish, which make about 2.83% of the population. The mass migration, however, did not occur until the late 19th century. The first wave of immigration. To begin with, we need to know the majority of Poles live in America today are mostly descent from the first wave. This largest wave of Polish immigration to America occurred in the years after American Civil War until World War I. Soon after the Franco-Prussian War, millions of Poles fled from the Polish district in Germany, Russia, and Austria. This group of immigrants known as Zakebem, which means for bread in English, because most of them were peasants in Poland that not own land and lack of basic nourishment. This is the largest wave of Polish immigration to America. Moreover, up to a third of Poles living in United States returned to Poland after a few years, but the majority stay. Primary objective of Poles were to save money and return to their native country to gain wealth. Next, we're gonna talk about the second wave of Polish immigration. One of the earliest permanent settlements of Poles in United States sprang up on the Texas plain, where a few hundred men, women, and children from Silesia found in the town of Panna Maria in 1854. The small farm community grew and thrived, and soon more and more Poles were making their way to America. The new arrivals tend to cluster in the industrial cities such as New York, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Detroit, and Chicago. Most of them became steel workers, meat packers, miners, and later auto workers. These cities still retain their large contingent of Polish Americans. A legacy of these Poles in America is the vital role they played in the growth and development of the U.S. labor movement, such as Joseph Jablonski of the United Mine Workers. Surely the large surge of Polish immigrants caused the American public to have a negative opinion. Nonetheless, Polish Americans continue to maintain a strong ethnic identity into the late 20th century. Next, the third wave of the immigration. The immigration in this wave mostly were wartime refugees. With the end of the World War I and the re-establishment of an independent Polish state, major numbers of Poles returned to their home country. During this period, the number of Polish immigration to United States greatly declined. Nevertheless, political oppression in Europe between the wars and World War II and the rise of the Soviet Union chased away 500,000 immigrants and refugees from Poland between 1918 and the late 1980s.
And as for the assimilation of Polish immigrants, the Polish immigrants came to America, were eager to blend into the American culture. Those who could not blend in quickly were afraid of being looked at as a foreigner. Most of them had no problem with the assimilation, but it can be described as an assimilation on a surface level, because Polish communities still retain their culture and the way of life, clearly seen in the way they still have Polish newspapers and radio stations. For Polish food, when Polish immigrants came to America, they also brought their traditional food to share with their new home. From observation, Polish food is like a combination of Slavic and German food. The first menu is bigos, or it is known in English as hunter's stew. It is cooked with chopped meat, sauerkraut, and various vegetables. It is a popular winter meal that will make you full for a long time. Next is pierogi. This dish is a very popular traditional Polish dish. It is dumpling made with thin dough that can be filled with variety of meat, cheese, or vegetables of your liking. The cooking process can be done by steaming or frying. The last one is tartar. It is an appetizer dish that is served as raw ground beef with raw eggs, raw onions, spice, and dill. It usually is served alongside with vodka. For the next part is this Polish stereotype. As always, Polish are no exception to having some stereotypes about them. First of all is that they are just like Russia. This is not true, although Poland does share some Slavic backgrounds with Russia. Poland has their own cultural identity, and sometimes they are more similar to the West than Russia. Next, we have something called a Polish joke. Apparently, it is a type of joke directed toward Polish people in America, based on the negative stereotype that Poles are stupid, or to mock the Polish habit. Polish jokes emerged from research of Polish immigrants that fled to the US. They did not understand English very much, so they were a subject of mockery. Next, Polish in American media. Unlike the others, Polish do not really have the staple type of characters that appears in the media. They are often shown as normal characters. However, one of the things that appears a lot is the last name Kowalski, namely the famous character Stanley Kowalski from Tennessee Williams' classic play A Streetcar Named Desire, and the replicant Leon Kowalski from 1980's science fiction film Blade Runner, and the penguin from Madagascar. Lastly is the famous people of Polish origin. The first famous people we're going to talk about is the actor John Krasinski. He was born in Boston, 1979. His father, Ronald Krasinski, is of Polish descent. He became famous for a role in series The Office, and starred in many different films, such as A Quiet Place and 13 Hours: The Secret Soldier of Benghazi. Next is Roman Polanski. He is known for being a film director in Hollywood. He was born in Europe. As a Jewish Polish, he was affected greatly by the Nazi persecution. He fled to the neighboring countries and eventually moved to America in 1968. His first movie with Hollywood is the horror movie Rosemary's Baby. A year later, his wife Sharon Tate was murdered by a member of the Manson family. Then, in 1977, he was involved with a sex scandal which made him flee the United States back to Europe. The last person is Shia LaBeouf. He was born in California, 1986. He is of Polish Jewish descent from his mother's side. He is a famous actor who starred in the first 3 Transformer movies. He also played in Indiana Jones, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and Fury.
Romania is a small country with a size of 92,000 square miles with a population of 19 million. The first record of Romanian in America was in the late 18th century. A priest named Samuel Damians came to America to conduct scientific experiments about electricity. Then during the California Gold Rush, a group of Romanians came to California but was unsuccessful. There were also records of Romanians who fought in the Civil War, but the major wave will not arrive until 1895. First major wave of the Romanian immigration to the United States took place between 1895 to 1920, in which 145,000 Romanians entered the country. They came from various regions and most were unskilled labor who left their native regions because of economic depression and forced assimilation, a policy practiced by Hungarian rules. By 1920, the Romanian American population was approximately 85,000. However, between 1921 to 1939, the number of Romanians entering United States declined for several reasons. Following World War I, Transylvania, Bukovina, Bessarabia and other regions under foreign rule officially became part of Romania, thus arresting immigration for a time. In addition, the U.S. Immigration Act of 1924 established a quota system which allowed only 603 persons per year to immigrate from Romania during the interwar period. The number of ethnic Romanians who migrate to the U.S. decreased as a consequence of the economic development in Romania, but the numbers of the Jews who migrate to the U.S. increased. Mostly after the rise of fascism, after the Second World War, the number of Romanians who migrate to the United States increased again. This time, they settled mostly in California, Florida, New York, and they came for throughout Romania. Moreover, after the fall of communism in 1989, thousands of new immigrants of all ages came to United States, and new arrivals, both legal and illegal, continued to enter this country. Because early Romanian immigrants who were either peasants or laborers, they settled in the major industrial center of East and Midwest and took unskilled jobs in the factories. The heaviest concentration of Romanian Americans can be found in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Illinois, Michigan, and Indiana. A substantial number of Romanians also settled in Florida and California.
Regarding the Romanian assimilation into American culture, Romanians who came to America during the late 19th and early 20th century did not plan to settle in the United States. The economic situation back in Romania was unpleasant for many. The purpose was to gain enough wealth from America and go back home to buy land, which many did leave after achieving their goal. However, Romanians that stayed can be seen mixing into American culture in the next generation. They still retain their own identity, especially in language and Orthodox Christian. Romanian churches are present in major big cities everywhere. And for Romanian food that are famous in America, first is stew fat. Stew fat is a Romanian meat stew typically made with lamb, chopped scallions, fresh green garlic, tomato paste, oil, and seasonings. This traditional dish is connected with the arrival of spring. Next is ostropel. It is a stew that made with chicken thighs or drumsticks, which are fried and add to tomato sauce as thickened with flour and spiced up with garlic and pepper. Rabbit, lambs, or other types of meat may be used. The last one is mishi. Romanian mishi is a variation of sausage normally made from a mix of beef, pork, and lamb, as well as spices that may include garlic, black pepper, thyme, or coriander. This cuisine often topping alongside with French fry and mustard and cold beer. For Romanian stereotypes, it may not be something to congratulate, but Romania has a very unique stereotype. Firstly, is about vampires. It is because of the famous novel Dracula by Bram Stoker that was set in Romania. So everyone associates Romania with vampires. However, I regret to tell you that vampires do not exist in Romania, and people don't hang garlics in front of their doors to chase away vampires. Another stereotype is that Romanians are thieves. The stereotype starts with a few bad people that travel to other countries with the purpose to steal. This type of behavior cannot be identified with the whole population though. And you may have seen some of the internet meme about it, but surely it is not true. The next thing is the media portrayal of Romanians. There's nothing much going on with the Romanian portrayal in the media except vampires. And that's about it. For the famous people that came from Romania. First one is John DeLorean. He was born in January 6, 1925 in Detroit, Michigan. He was the eldest of 4 sons of Zachary and Catherine DeLorean. His father was Romanian, and he was well known as an American engineer, inventor, and executive in the US automobile industry. He is widely known for his work at General Motors and the founder of DeLorean Motor Company. Moreover, DeLorean managed to develop a number of vehicles through his career, including the Pontiac GTO, Pontiac Firebird, and Pontiac Grand Prix. And the most famous of all is the DMC DeLorean, which is featured in the movie Back to the Future. Next person is Sebastian Stan. He was born in August 13, 1982, in Constanta, Romania. In 1993, Stan and his mother moved to Rockland County, New York, after his mother married the headmaster of a school in the United States. He was raised in Romanian Orthodox Church. He was known as a popular actor in the role of Bucky Barnes, or Winter Soldier in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, beginning with the film Captain America: The First Avenger, and most recently starring in Disney Plus miniseries The Falcon and Winter Soldier. On television, Stan also played Carter Bison in Gossip Girl. We have 4 questions for you to answer. The first one is, why are the American public opinions against the Russians during the Cold War? Who was the first Ukrainian in America? What does Cy Shelburne means? What did we not mention about Romania?